What is up, guys? 70 Savage here, coming at you with a brand new video. Today we are finishing up the galley unit. There are three main things that we're going to cover in this video: the paneling for the galley unit, all of the surfaces that you're going to see, the countertop for the galley unit, and finally the latches on all of the drawers. A lot of these things that we're doing in this video are brand new to me, and I'm really excited to see how they actually turn out. I'm hoping that this finished galley unit looks professionally done and absolutely badass. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So in the part one video of this galley unit, we constructed all of the drawers. They all work and slide nicely, and we put some finishing touches on them, like the edge banding on the faces that we're going to end up seeing. We also constructed the mechanism here for the undermount sink that can support all of this weight even in off-road conditions. And finally, we mounted this isotherm Freeline 115 fridge. It is super strong as well. It's bolted in 4 locations to the 80/20 frame. The next step that we're going to do is construct all of the paneling for the outside surfaces on the galley unit. We're basically going to have bolt holes on the panels exposed, but in a way that makes them look fancy. I'm going to start with the simplest of all the panels, the strips on the front here. 3/4 of an inch in from all the surfaces, basically where we're going to access these T-slots and bolt the panels to the frame. I'm going to use countersink bolts, and I'm going to leave the heads of those countersink bolts exposed. We're going to space them evenly so that it looks nice and finished, but also has kind of an industrial vibe to it. We got the first face completed here. They're basically just these small 1.5 inch strips that cover the outside of the 80/20 where there are not drawers. A lot of people who use 80/20 for their builds I've seen use the 80/20 exposed. I, however, love the strength and rigidity of 80/20, but I don't want to see any 80/20 on the outside. The way that I actually implemented this is I marked out all the locations. I drilled a hole straight through with a 3/8 inch drill bit, just a regular old drill bit. And then I came in with the countersink drill bit that made space for the countersink bolts and made just enough room so that the bolts sit flush with the outside of the wood. With my design, I have bolts inserted in the corners, which might sound challenging because the 80/20 ends there. What I've done is I've actually just tapped the ends of these 80/20, and it ends up looking something like this. I'm putting links to the drill bits that I use to actually execute this in the video description below. So if you're using 80/20, you don't have to do this. You could probably figure out a way to completely conceal the 80/20 and not have any bolt holes exposed at all, making it look as if it was built entirely out of wood. I think that would be a cool look as well. But this is what I like, and this is what I'm going with. We just finished this panel. We haven't drilled the holes yet, but it is looking absolutely perfect. We did it with all one piece because we're extra fancy. So I actually decided to go with about an 1/8 of an inch gap. You're gonna have a lot of movement in the van, so need a little bit more space between them. So now we're moving on to this panel right here, and this panel has an interesting curve. If you guys haven't seen one of my previous videos where I'm actually scribing out complex curves, which happen a lot in this van, it's very, very simple. So all you need to do is you take the cardboard, you slide it all the way against the curve that you're gonna scribe, take your pencil, and you scribe it. And at this point, you just keep repeating the process. So you scribe, you cut, you scribe, you cut. Now all we've got to do is use the same anchor point, which was the top left corner, line it up, and then we can take our pencil and trace this onto the wood. Since it's curved, we're going to use our trusty jigsaw to cut it out. Now we're going to take that piece of wood, slide it in, shiggity diggity, we got ourselves a perfect fit. This piece right here that's going to go on this side in front of the drawers is 1/2 inch thick because it needs to match the 1/2 inch thickness of the drawer fronts. But for this piece back here, I have very little room between the front of this and basically the edge of the van. So we only used 1/4 inch there, save ourselves a little bit of weight. All right, so the next step for the galley unit is to surface all of the panels that we're gonna see on the outside. I know they look pretty nice when they're just this natural pre-finished maple, but I'd prefer to have them all a nice white. Despite the fact that we paid extra for this wood to be pre-finished, the first step for the surfacing and turning these things white is sanding off all of that pre-finish. We sanded down all of the panels here. There are a couple of small mistakes that I made while creating these things, such as this hole I missed by about 1/4 inch. I'm going to use this Bondo wood filler to fill any gaps and to fix any of the scuffs on the edges of the board. Link to this in the description below. So as far as finishing these panels, we're gonna do something a little bit different than we did in the last van, but not too different. I wanna start this off by saying I was strongly considering using laminate in the beginning of this. This is high pressure laminate material that's typically used for countertops in homes. It's like a really, really strong surface that's painted on one side. I definitely don't think it's a bad option. The combination of how hard it is to work with this laminate, as well as that dark edge that shows anywhere you place it on a surface, I'm gonna go with paint instead. As far as what we're gonna use for painting, I went to Sherwin-Williams and we got some multi-purpose primer. This stuff's pretty cheap. And then we are using this as our paint, which is relatively new product from Sherwin-Williams. It's not actually a paint, it is an enamel. It's specifically built for trim pieces and stuff that you're touching a lot. It supposedly dries a whole heck of a lot harder. I'm hoping that it's kind of the equivalent of using paint and then coating it with a clear finish like a polyurethane. We're gonna do 1 coat of primer, 2 coats of enamel, and we'll see how it goes. So these bad boys are completely sanded. We filled in any gaps with that wood filler. We just hit them with the tack cloth to get any dust off, and then we just have them resting on these little pyramids here to elevate them so it's easier to paint the sides. Very important when you are painting anything, start with the side that matters least and then flip them over and do the side that matters most. That's gonna allow you to make any corrections and sand off any drips on the side that matters the most so that the finished product, the good side, is the best. As far as the gear that I use for painting, I have a 6-inch roller with a 1/4 inch nap roller blade tip thing. And then for all the little hard to reach areas, I use a small foam brush. In between coats, all we do is hit it with a little bit of hand sanding. The final coat on these panels is now dry. They turned out looking fantastic. I actually really like that Sherwin-Williams enamel. It does feel to dry a little bit harder than regular paint. I think it's gonna be a lot more durable inside the van. Now for the moment of truth, let's go put these bad boys back on the van and see how they turned out. Take a look at these panels, guys. I could not be more stoked with how they turned out. The idea with the exposed countersink bolts is pretty much exactly the look that I was going for. Kind of an industrial modern look. Probably not for everybody, but I really like it. For now, I'm gonna leave these bolts as raw stainless steel, but I feel like at one point it might be cool to paint them some crazy color like gold or something. Something else I just love about this color is the combination of the white panels with the natural pre-finished maple drawers. Just looks so good. The very next step here is designing the shape of our countertop. Now, since we're using a very expensive sheet of Korean solid surface, it's important that we template it out with a couple of materials. Alrighty, so we have ourselves the cardboard template here. All we need to do now is transfer this thing onto a piece of Baltic birch. I did have some scraps left over of Baltic birch from the 3 floors, so I did not cut a fresh sheet to make this piece right here. We have traced out the cardboard template that we made yesterday onto here, and we're gonna cut it out. We are gonna make some small adjustments now while it's cheap, and then we're gonna go put it back in the van and see how it looks. We finished cutting out the Baltic birch 1/2-inch countertop, which is the same thickness that we're going to use for our final material. It actually looks pretty nice. You could probably just use this if you really wanted to. Moving on to the next step, this is one of the scariest steps of the entire galley build. It is time to make the countertop. I bought this sheet individually and got it shipped to me. It is 1/2-inch thick Corian branded solid surface countertop. The color that we got is called white onyx. I absolutely love this color. If you guys have ever used solid surface in your house, you know that it is not a cheap material. This sheet without shipping, I think was $400, somewhere around that. And so the pressure is on for us to cut this right the first time around. We wouldn't want another floor project happening. I got a quote for somebody else to do this for me, and they couldn't even do it in the exact way that I wanted, and they quoted me $1,600. This sheet before we cut it was 39.8 pounds. We created our first template out of wood, and then I practiced using the router on creating a second countertop that's an exact duplicate of the first one. And we're gonna use this router to make all of the cuts in the corian surface. Some of you guys might know that I claim to be a god with a jigsaw and might be wondering why I'm not using a jigsaw for this. It's not recommended to use a jigsaw on solid surface countertops because of the risk of them cracking. A router is the recommended method for cutting this stuff. The bit that we are using to make all these cuts is a flush trim bit, a 1/2 inch flush trim bit with a bearing on the bottom. I'll put a link to this bit in the description below. The margin for error on that bit is actually way higher than I was anticipating. I was cutting this surface right here onto the new template that I just tested things out on. And when I got to this section, I completely forgot that we had this little cutout in here, and it took me by surprise. I went, completely lost control of the router, and it actually still did a completely perfect job. We didn't damage the template, and we didn't damage the piece that we were transferring the template onto. And then we are going to use a second bit. This is an 1/8 inch round over bit. Link to that bit in the description below as well. And that's gonna give us a nice rounded look and soft edge on the part of the countertop that we're gonna be touching. Cutting the very first hole here with a hole saw so that we have a space to insert the router bit. And we're gonna start with the sink cutout. Moment of truth, guys. Let's turn it over and see how she turned out. At first glance, this came out way better than I was expecting to do my first time ever cutting solid surface. Even these corners just came out perfect. If you are wondering about these corners and wondering how I got them all to a perfect 1/2 inch radius, well, for the final countertop, all I did is trace them from the template. But on the template, I took a 1/2 inch round item. I think I used the bottom side of a hole saw bit, and I marked the curvature that I wanted, and I just took my sander and made sure it perfectly lined up with that line that I marked. So now, after making all of our cuts, we are in at just under 22 pounds. That's about what I was expecting. I'm pretty happy with that considering how strong the solid surface material is. We're gonna hit it with 3 different grades of sandpaper, a 150, a 220, and then a 400. You can go for a matte finish, semi-gloss finish, or a full gloss finish. For the semi-gloss finish, you use the gray pads, and for the matte finish, you use these red pads. Home Depot did not have any of the gray pads in stock, so I'm gonna start with a matte finish and see how I like that. So as far as attaching this countertop to the galley unit, what we're gonna use is an invention called a keep nut. It allows you to create a threaded hole that you can attach a bolt to. This little guy right here is what a keep nut looks like. This is what they look like when they're finally installed. I will put a link to these in the description below. All you need to do is use the drill bit that they give you. After you drill your hole, all you do is you attach your keep nut to the keep nut setting tool. You place it on the top of the hole, and then you whack it on the back with this rubber mallet, which sets the keep nut into the material that you want it to go into. It's getting dark, so it might be kind of hard to see, but the first test fit is looking fantastic. At this point, I think it's fair to say I've already spent about a week's worth of concentration. It almost feels like velvet or something. It's really nice to touch. The only problem that I have is that this unit kind of reminds me of like a science lab a little bit. And although it would be cool to be the next Walter White in a van, I think I want to do an experiment. I may or may not have gone to Home Depot and got some butcher blocks on a whim. They were just too cheap to pass up. I mean, look at this thing. I even took the opportunity to buy 2 of the exact same ones. So we're gonna try making the same countertop out of a birch butcher block. So as far as how we actually made the butcher block, we did something very similar to the Korean countertop. We started with that Baltic birch template. We traced it on to the butcher block. We cut it out using a track saw for all of the straight lines and a jigsaw for all of the curved lines. At that point, I decided to hollow out one side of the bottom of the butcher block, which took way too long and only shaved off 4 pounds. After which we tested out a couple of different finishes. One of them was a Watco butcher block oil and finish, and the other one was just a regular water-based polyurethane that I had used in the past. We ended up going with the water-based polyurethane. We did 8 coats of this on the top and 3 coats on the back. As far as securing the countertop to the galley unit, we used these lag bolts here to go through an angle bracket into the butcher block directly. So we finished the countertop, and if if you ask me, I think this one looks pretty darn good. It is really nice in combination with the exposed bolt holes. I'm gonna leave this one up to you guys. Do you guys like the white corian solid surface countertop, or do you guys like the butcher block better? Let's cut to the montage. I'm gonna have to say I like this one a little bit better. I think it balances out the look between industrial and actually home-like. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So the next and final step for this galley unit are the latches. I have done a ton of research on latches, whether they be for boats, RVs, caravans, anything that moves. I've probably seen every single latch that exists. I also used a few different types of latches on my last van, and I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted on this one. For this van, I really wanted the latches that were also combined with the handle mechanism, so they had a strong mechanical lock. I basically ruled out all of the latching mechanisms that were like magnetic latches, black Southco plastic latches, or ball catch latches, anything that unlatches with just the amount of force that you're pulling on it. As you guys know, with the zombie apocalypse van, we are indeed going to be doing off-roading, so I wanted to have the strongest latching mechanisms possible. There are 5 different types of latches here that I considered for this van. On this side, these actually aren't even latches. I thought that they were latches, but they're literally just flush pulls. I do not recommend these in any shape or form because the next contender, we have these paddle latches. Now this is a very, very tiny paddle latch, but you can get them in all different shapes. These are made by Southco. The way that you use this one here is you put your finger in the latch, you pull the paddle up, and when you pull that paddle, the latching mechanism comes down. The panel thickness that you have to have for your doors is basically like a 1/4 inch. And since our doors are 1/2 inch thickness, that pretty much ruled these latches out. Next thing I considered is the compression latch. That's this one right here. These things are pretty interesting as well. The way that they work is you press this button, which pops out the handle. And when that happens, the compression part unlatches and you can use this handle to pull your drawers in and out. And then you push your drawer back in and you re-latch it. Also made by Southco. The only reason I didn't go with this is because they're a little bit big and they aren't gonna work on all of my drawers. Up next, we have the infamous flush latches or slam latches. These things are all over the place. Anytime you go into a nice yacht or sailboat, you're gonna see these latches right here. They're very simple. The way that they work is you put them in the door and then you pull this up, which unlatches the device and allows you to pull the drawer open. This one is just a smaller version. These are a great option. I was so close to picking these latches because they fit all of the requirements that I had. The option that I went with that barely outclassed these slam latches are a brand new latch from a company called RV Labs. When you pull the handle, the latch engages or disengages. They have almost no rattling noise at all. I don't think that this is going to be audible. They come in 2 different sizes, the skinny ones and then the thicker ones. And you can get them in a ton of different colors. You can pretty much have any customizable metal. The downside to these, and also these ones as well, is they're both pretty expensive. So just know that going into it. The only reason that these RV Labs latches edged out the flush latches is simply aesthetic. I really do like the aesthetic of these, especially when they're installed in the drawers. You guys will see it in a little bit when I'm installing them, but I think they just look amazing. They look really modern. One latch I do not have here that you're probably wondering why the heck hasn't he talked about them are push button latches. The push button latches that I could find on the internet were all of the plastic variety. In this van, I really want to use quality latches. So now let's go ahead and install these bad boys in the van. So when you get these in the mail, it comes with 2 parts. It comes with the latch and handle all as one piece, and then the catch. All you need to do is secure this latch to your door. There's 2 holes for screws in the back, and then you need your catch installed right in the back of the drawer. So this bottom drawer has its catch attached to the bottom of this top drawer. The top drawer has its catch attached to the back of this panel right here. The trash drawer is actually also secured to the bottom of this panel. Finally, this long drawer, we had to grind down the size of the catch a little bit, and it's just screwed directly into the butcher block. I really do like the look of these RV Labs latches. I do have to admit, I don't like that they're made out of plastic. One downside of the RV Labs latches combined with the Bloom soft close drawers is that they don't have the strength to pull the drawer fully closed. You have to give it a little tap. We just got this faucet installed. It's looking pretty good. This is the exact same faucet that I used in the last van. Super easy to install. You basically just put this nut up against the back and it holds itself in place. We're just gonna pass the plumbing lines down here. And I'm probably gonna put them through that sidewall over there. I'm not exactly sure yet. Link to this bad boy in the description below. So we have the sink drain coming down here, which is perfectly in between the trash can and the sides of these drawers. We're gonna have plenty of room to pass the drain line down. The sink satchel, which is this piece of wood attached to this aluminum that cradles the sink, is pushed flush up against the bottom of the countertop. I haven't actually put silicone on it yet. So as far as overall dimensions here, we have 22 3/4 in width, 43 1/4 in length. Without the butcher block, we have 37 in height. The butcher block hangs over a little bit. It adds 1/2 inch on the front, 1/2 inch on this side, and only 1/4 inch down here. It is an 1.5 inch thickness butcher block. And then finally, the sink is 10.5 inches deep, including the height of the butcher block. I am extremely stoked to be saying this. We are finally done with the kitchen galley unit. It is 100% complete. There were a ton of intricacies involved in making this thing, but I think it paid off. I am so satisfied with how this thing turned out. Definitely share your opinion on which countertop you like better. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.